everybody? We are back for another episode of Pickin Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by my friend Tom. Tom, how are you today, man?
Doing good today, Keith. What a UFC 292 card we saw 2 days ago. Sugar Sean O'Malley is the bantamweight king. He's 28 years old. He is second in the bantamweight division for knockouts all time. Excited to see where his career goes. Also, a pretty decent showing by our boy Chito Vera. Pretty solid showing, but I think at the end of that fight, I wanted to see him go out there. I wanted to see him get a finish. It was good for him to show that he actually can, go out there, win decisions, because it seems like as of late, Chito Vera's approach to fighting has been, you start slow and you come on late and you hope to look for a knockout even if you're losing in the rounds. And that's worked out well for him up until a certain point. But glad to see him go out there and in a shorter fight, still go out there and get the victory. Does that qualify him for a title shot against Sean O'Malley? I don't know, but luckily in the UFC, it's not about what qualifies you. It's what do the people want to see and what will sell the most and what has the best story. And thus, that's why I think Chito Vera is probably going to be next. It depends on what's going to make the most money. And we've seen multiple times from Sugar Sean, it's all about the money. So I like that. I'm excited. Aljo, what did you think of that finish with the Aljo fight?
I saw some people saying that it was an early stoppage, but really by the rules, it made sense. It followed the rules of MMA, but and I think that he was given plenty of chances to recover. It was really when he rolled over, and it looked like he kind of resigned at that point. Yeah, but the fight with Chito Vera, I think, makes sense. The timing of it all makes a lot of sense. Marab is hurt right now. Corey Sandhagen's hurt. There's a lot of guys that, would make a lot more sense, I think, than Chito. I think Chito probably needs one more win for it to really make sense, against higher level competition than Pedro Munoz. But, yeah, storyline, money-wise, that makes sense. It'll be fun. The build up to it should be interesting, and happy for Chito that he's potentially getting his shot. But anything could happen with the UFC, right? We still haven't had a confirmed, Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards, and we've been hearing about it forever. So, only time will tell if that'll actually happen.
I mean, he confirmed things. Conor McGregor, right?
Yeah. Well, he also talked about boxing Gervonta Davis too, which is interesting. No. Sean O'Malley.
O'Malley, yeah. O'Malley said that he's potentially willing to do that. I don't know. You think the UFC is not going to get into it with Francis and then turn around and get into it with Sean and Gervonta Davis?
Yes.
Why?
Because I think that Sean is way more in Dana's good graces. And, Dana seemed everybody knows on the internet, in the MMA spaces, in the community, Dana, this is a favorable outcome for Dana. Sean O'Malley is a huge moneymaker. Francis was obstinate, didn't want to fight multiple times a year. Sean O'Malley is already asking for a December turnaround. He's just more of a company man than Francis was.
I think while all of that, I think is true, I just think Dana doesn't want to get dirty with fucking boxing again. I think he had a real bad taste in his mouth for how it went. I don't think it was. I mean, he's even had a bad taste in his mouth with boxing as he tried to take over Zuffa boxing. And that was something that was supposed to be coming down the pike and then never eventually happened, I think, because of the craziness and how muddy and potentially corrupt boxing is. And I think Dana's just you know what, screw that. I'm not doing a crossover. I'm not giving them any more shine. It's yeah, it's a different pay structure. But at the end of the day, if he keeps his people internally, there's not a ton of people in boxing that are going to want to see Sugar Sean O'Malley. And you got to consider what the results have been. MMA switching up and going over to boxing. How many times are you going to try and get your star? Even if he competes, you can take that as a moral victory, but I don't think it really does much for your sport when you're trying to contend. I think it's a lose-lose situation other than a moneymaker, and only that moneymaker is only because of the breakdown of pay. And if you're Dana White, I think, yeah, it takes a lot of investment. It takes a lot of risk to put on a boxing fight like that. A lot of lawyers you have to pay delegate and legislate. Not legislate, that's not the right word, but you know what I'm trying to say. To deal with, litigate, that's what I'm looking for. To litigate all of those boxing contracts that I think Dana White would probably be better off and better served keeping Sean O'Malley in-house.
Just keep in mind, he was willing to do it with John Jones and Tyson Fury.
How long ago?
Like 3 months.
Yeah, he says that, but again, I don't.
If
I
it
don't
came down to it,
believe it.
where it was a pissing competition between him and Francis, and he had the opportunity to do that,
Well, right. I think.
100%.
Well,
But also, like, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound like
that could be enough motivation right there for Dana White right there. If it's a pitching contest, say, all
yeah,
right, France, if you're going to do this, then I'm going to do that. Like he's already trying to stack the same night of fights, the same weekend of fights that France is going to be fighting on. So I can definitely see that motivation being because it's not about money. Dana's fucking rich as shit. I don't think it's about acquiring more wealth for Dana completely. Like I don't think that's a big enough motivating factor for him to deal with all of the bullshit that comes along with boxing. I think spite is.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if enough money.
And I don't know if O'Malley boxing is enough of like the spike card for. I think having John go and fight in heavyweight and just take that away from Francis. Now that's a storyline that Dana can get behind. I think O'Malley in a totally different division doesn't,
it's
scratch the same itch.
It's not like enough money is ever enough money when you're that rich. Like it's if he wasn't interested in money, he wouldn't be starting things like Power Slap.
I mean, I guess that's fair. He's a gambler by trade.
Yeah, exactly. He gambles hundreds of thousands of dollars. So like, it's not like he's not interested in making money. And
I'm just saying that's not the biggest factor.
Yeah, but I don't think I've also ever heard him say publicly that he would never get back into boxing. So I
don't have the receipts on that, but I feel like I've heard him say like I don't want to do boxing. Like it was in relation to Francis.
It's
so
all
maybe that had something to say.
It's all time and place, but like you got to keep in mind. Yes, he's interested in making more money. He's a businessman at the end of the day. If this is a business opportunity that he could get into, he's going to do it. Like if he's talking about maybe signing Logan Paul, the guy signed CM Punk. Like he's into gimmicks. He always says like
not talking about signing Logan Paul. Like, didn't he say that he was going to sign them, and it turned out like Logan Paul was going to sign with the UFC, and it turned out they did, but it was for Prime. Like it's fucking all it's all
it's not like
advertisement and marketing.
He's so all I'm saying is don't think that it's not a possibility. Like anything could happen.
Fair enough. I would just be more inclined to not believe it and think that Dana would want to keep that stuff in house, considering what he said about boxing. But then maybe I fabricated that. Maybe he hasn't said anything about boxing. Maybe I'm totally nuts. And he just didn't want to do it with Francis because he didn't believe that Francis was a big enough personality. But it seemed like throughout those Francis discussions, he was pretty keen on not getting back into boxing.
Yeah, he's also Francis just wasn't a company man. But anyways, like anything could happen with Sean O'Malley. I think Chito Vera may not necessarily be like the man that beats him. I have a feeling that Sean O'Malley is going to have like a long title reign, but time will tell. This is an interesting card that we're about to talk about. This, what's it called? It's
UFC Fight Night Singapore, even though it's happening at 8 a.m.
Right. I think it's the UFC Fight Night Singapore, because when it's the location, we don't call it by the names of the guys or whatever. I don't know, but this is it's a pretty decent card. There's a lot of these guys that were on that Derek Lewis, Sergey Spivak card maybe like 6 months ago or so that were supposed to fight in Singapore, and for a couple different reasons that card didn't happen. It's a lot of guys regional to Asia, in close proximity to Singapore. Some guys from Japan, South Korea, some of the Eastern Bloc countries. So really interesting card. It's a lot of names that maybe the casual viewer isn't so familiar with, but it's a lot to get excited for. There's some really incredible strikers on this card that I'm looking forward to. And there's definitely some money to be made. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Why don't we just jump right into our prelim notables?
Mm-hmm.
All right. You want to go first?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Yusaku Kinoshita over Billy Goff. And I know that this is an unpopular bet right now. The majority of people on Tapology have Billy Goff winning that fight. He does have really strong hands. He showed them off on the Contender Series. But Yusaku Kinoshita also has really strong hands too. Specializes in striking. He had a loss in his debut against Adam Fugit, which came because Adam Fugit took him down. Yusaku was a little bit too aggressive in that fight, and also Adam Fugit just had a crazy chin in that fight too. Ate nasty head kick right off the dome and then took down Yusaku. I just think experience plays a little bit of a factor in that. Kinoshita most definitely learned from that first UFC fight. We've seen guys really drop the ball in their debut, and he did put on a good performance up until he was taken down and finished. So I'm gonna roll with Yusaku Kinoshita in this one. I think he's gonna get it done. There's a few factors that are in his favor that may not necessarily or definitely wasn't the last time that he fought. He's not going to have to travel as far. He's not going to have to come to Vegas and acclimate and get here 2 weeks in advance to get used to a sleep schedule. Like he's relatively close to home and everything. We're going to see that as a recurring theme on this card. Whereas Billy Goff coming from America, disadvantage there. But going with Yusaku Kinoshita, really strong hands, great stand-up fighter. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I like that pick. I think you're being a little bit of a contrarian there, going against Tapology. Yusaku Kinoshita, Vegas is still on him as the favorite. So I think it's definitely interesting to see what he's going to look like at 23 years of age, coming out of the second UFC fight against Billy Goff, who's only 25 years old. But in his first UFC fight, obviously looked good on the Contender Series and has a lot of knockouts to his credit. Both these guys are super young in their career, so it's interesting to see what's going to happen. But I don't know which way it's going to go. I haven't watched enough of Billy Goff to really get a good reading on that. But I did see what you're talking about with Yusaku Kinoshita. So really right there. Another interesting fight that I'm really looking forward to. The people may know a little bit more of these guys. Chidi Njokuani, Michael Oleksiejczuk, both of these guys are UFC veterans at this point. Michael Oleksiejczuk is 3-2 in his last 5, showing you on the screen right now who his last wins and losses were against. He had an uppercut KO over Shamil Gamzatov, took away his undefeated record there. Then against Dustin Jacoby in a largely kickboxing fight, he lost the unanimous decision there. It's actually when we saw the first bit of like a chink in his armor almost for the UFC. He beat Sam Alvey with a left cross, not a big deal. Cody Brundage knocked him out. Not a giant deal either. Then recently had that lost via submission rear naked choke to Kai Barallo, in which case he really didn't look great in that fight at all. Chidi Njokuani also 3-2 over his last 5. He's got some knockouts to his credit over Dusko Todorovic, Barkadje Barrio, and Mario Sosa. The last 2 fights have been losses, but it's been against really strong competition in Gregory Rodriguez and Albert Duraev, in which case he lost a very close split decision. In this one, what I noticed about both of these strikers is I think Chidi Njokuani is going to be a little bit quicker. Michael Oleksiejczuk is probably going to have the better chin. He does a good job at managing distance, but when Michael Oleksiejczuk has his biggest problems is traditionally against people that have a good takedown defense, which Chidi Njokuani has a solid takedown defense, but nothing crazy. But Michael Oleksiejczuk does have his best or his worst performances, should I say, against a kickboxer who is longer and rangier than him. And that's exactly what Chidi Njokuani is. You can see it on the screen here. He is a little bit older, but he's 6'3" with an 80-inch reach for the 185-pound division. So he's going to tower over Michael Oleksiejczuk, and he has 6 inches on him just in terms of his reach, and I'm sure he'll have a couple inches in terms of leg reach as well to be able to utilize and keep distance away and try to piece up Michael Oleksiejczuk, who does at certain points leave himself open to be hit. He does do a lot of blocking shots instead of getting out of the way, which could accumulate damage over time. I think if Chidi Njokuani uses some of those leg kicks that he's used so well against other fighters, I think he can slow Oleksiejczuk down and then be able to jump in and be able to hit him before Oleksiejczuk can hit him back. You've got to watch out for the return shots and the counter punches by Michael Oleksiejczuk. He's somebody who will like plot forward, but not necessarily throw first. So definitely something to watch out for him for there. But I'm going to go with Chidi Njokuani to get this one done. What do you think, Keith?
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I like Chidi Njokuani. He's been profitable for us in the past. He's definitely won us some money. 2-fight losing streak. Expect him to pick up, and get back on the W column this week. For my next one, I'm going to go with Garrett Armfield over Toshiomi Kazama. And that's primarily just due to Garrett Armfield's great wrestling, grappling, jiu-jitsu game. He really likes to control the distance on guys, get in close, and Toshiomi does as well. Kazama likes to start early, start fast. We saw that in his UFC debut, which was, I think that was the final fight in Road to the UFC. It was, he fought a man, he lost to a guy that we'll talk about later on by the name of Rinya Nakamura. Guy's crazy. But Garrett Armfield, against a guy like Toshiomi Kazama, who he starts very fast, tries to close the distance. Garrett Armfield's probably going to take him down and roll with him for a good chunk of this fight, looking for submissions. Toshiomi doesn't really have great defensive grappling. Garrett Armfield can control guys anywhere up against the clinch on the ground. He also lost in his debut against David Onama, but David Onama has become a little bit more multidimensional as he's grown in the UFC. Toshiomi Kazama, only one fight in the UFC, and he really hasn't become that well-rounded yet. Incredible striker, could catch Garrett Armfield. Garrett Armfield throws strikes a little slowly. He is, at least in his last fight, his striking wasn't really great. But sometimes it's those weird slow ones that make contact. And he did do that a couple of times against David Onama, a couple nice uppercuts, a couple good hooks. But yeah, definitely expect him to take down Toshiomi Kazama, look for submissions, and then on the feet, Toshiomi will touch him up a little bit. Garrett Armfield will, I'm thinking he'll fight back just as well, and then look to clinch, look to grapple, probably win by decision. So I'm going Garrett Armfield. You got any more, Tom?
No, that was the only other one I wanted to talk about, and this is one that I don't necessarily have a pick for. Like, as we like to just say, call these prelim locks, or we previously called them prelim locks. I am going to go with Rolando Bedoya here. I just think that he's a little bit of a younger fighter. He's got more going for him here. And after the two most recent losses for Keenan Song, he had the knockout to Max Griffin, which obviously really 2.5 years later doesn't age all that well. The knockout loss to Ian Gary, obviously, I would say it doesn't age well, but you still got knocked out. Although Ian Gary is going on to do bigger and better things. He had a dominant victory over Neil Magny.
What a scorecard.
What a scorecard with a 30-24. I went back and rewatched it. I don't know. I mean, yes, they were knockdowns because he kicked out the leg, but, watching that fight, it wasn't 30-24. I would think 30-24 would have somebody leaving with just totally busted up face and just having their way with him. And while Ian Machado Gary absolutely did whatever he wanted in that fight, I would have expected for, if you knock the guy down with leg kicks 3 times in the first round and he's visibly limping in the second round, that you have to go out there and finish that fight. So I'm a little I think it's a great performance and a domination. But I also feel like he left a little bit of meat on the bone because it was so dominant, and he didn't go out there and finish Neil Magny, who was on one leg, and I think his other leg was starting to get beat up too. He refused to move to a southpaw stance. He just kept putting that leg out there. He'd move it back. He was even hobbling on it. He couldn't even really throw it, and he couldn't throw off his right. He couldn't throw his right kick either because he couldn't stand on the leg. So you take a dimension away from the guy, and you still can't find a way to finish him. It left a little bit of something. And then we saw at the end when he finally took him down, he was actually getting success, and maybe he could have finished Neil Magny there. So I feel like I missed a little bit of tenacity from Ian Gary there.
That's
but
a fair point.
Nevertheless,
I think it might have been. I'm sorry. I keep cutting you off.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think we would have seen a more tenacious Ian Machado Gary against Jeff Neal. There was legit beef there beforehand. Neil Magny, did you see him fabricate? Not to go back too much on this but just the way that he overblow the whole, you don't put your hands on a child, that whole thing. That was just.
Yeah, I mean, he was trying to start beef.
Yeah, I think that there was a little bit of a kind of a beef there with Jeff Neal. It's interesting. You're starting to see him try and troll his opponents more and more nowadays, and do it from
lines from Connor.
Yeah, but he's also not doing it from a chauvinistic way where he's oh, I have more money than you, shit like that. He's like, you're a bad person, and here's why. Like, he's like, Jeff Neal, I have a T-shirt with your DUI mugshot on it, and then he's like, you hit your kid, Neil Magny. Like, it's an interesting approach he's
He's
taking.
like he's a vigilante UFC fighter.
Yeah, he's like taking down these bad guys. But
That's funny.
yeah. Also, just want to say this too. Speaking of taking down bad guys, Kevin Holland fight announcement, Jack Della Maddalena, very important.
That's a huge fight.
I can't.
That's a huge fight.
Wait. I can't.
I can, because I don't know who's gonna. I don't want neither of them to lose it. So I can't.
I'm so excited for that one. Anyways, let's get back to talking about Rolando Bedoya.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Rolando Bedoya. He fought a very close decision with Chaos Williams back and forth. He was taking some shots and he was landing some shots. He just showed, I think, a good class to his game, that if he can hang in there with everything that Chaos Williams is going to throw at him, I think Keenan Song, 5 months after getting knocked out by Ian Machado Gary and almost completely outclassed there. I think Rolando Bedoya, the younger guy with a better grappling and a good chin and ability to knock people out, and obviously a higher career trajectory or a place to go, I'm going to go with Rolando Bedoya to get it done here. Arguably about the same size and height, but Bedoya is going to have much more muscle, much more of a built guy here, and he's also going to have a reach advantage. So Rolando Bedoya for me.
Yeah, I like the pick. I'll tell you there. All right, you ready to move on to this main card?
All right, main card. All right, starting off the main card, Junior Tafa, Parker Porter. What are your thoughts?
I'm conflicted on this one because Junior and Justin are brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to assume anything. They do look very similar, same last name, but not trying to assume anything. But yeah, they are brothers. Justin Tafa beat Parker Porter. Parker Porter looked good in his last fight, but he did fight Braxton Smith, who we did see him in person at the Prudential Center. I believe that was 288. While he was a physical specimen, Braxton Smith, Tom, you mind just pulling up his picture real quick? You just go through like the Parker Porter and go to his last fight. But that guy was
I could have done that, but
yeah, it's all good. That guy was a beast of a man, Braxton Smith, and a lot of the guys sitting near us, we had like a bunch of young kids putting a ton of money on FanDuel, as I was as well. But they were all on Braxton Smith, and I believe we were at the time too, because just look at the guy, and then you have a guy with the history of Parker Porter, who just seems bound to lose in the UFC. Like a little bit of a setup guy. Got the finish against Braxton Smith. Braxton Smith vastly underprepared when it came to cardio in the UFC. Like all of his finishes were within seconds pre-UFC. He gets there. Parker Porter outlasts him, has a little bit more experience. Now, I don't know how to – this is a tough one because you also have an underexperienced Junior Tafa. Junior Tafa is not as big as Braxton Smith. He doesn't walk around as heavy. He is a heavyweight, but he's not just so muscle-bound. And roided out looking in the same way. But I think I'm going to roll with the more experienced Parker Porter here. He seemed really amped after his win and just talked about how much harder he's going to keep going in the future. So I don't know. I think maybe he'll get a win over Junior Tafa. I'm not particularly confident in either one of these guys. But experience goes a long way in the UFC, so I'm going to go with Parker Porter.
Yeah, I thought I was having some form of deja vu when I was looking at this fight. I was like, didn't he already fight Justin Tafa? No, he did fight Justin Tafa. He hasn't fought Junior Tafa, who he fights this weekend. He lost to Justin Tafa in the first round via a counter left here. So Justin Tafa, we know, is a guy who has knockout ability. And when we look at Parker Porter, he gets knocked out is really what it boils down to. And usually it's against good fighters. You started his first fight in the UFC, Chris Daukaus, he gets knocked out. And then he beats Josh Parisian, Chase Sherman, Alan Badeau, none of which are going to be in the contention for a championship or even in the rankings anytime soon, or probably not even in the UFC as of now.
Yeah.
I think that's potentially a future for Parker Porter as well. Jairton Almeida, he is a potential heavyweight, championship contender. And then Justin Tafa knocks him out, but we know he has knockout power. The thing about Junior Tafa, His knockout ability still remains a little bit questionable considering the 4-3 and the 6-1 opponents he's fought. He's had some boxing fights, unanswered punches here, not like a knockout. Those are less likely in boxing anyway. He's done a variety of different martial arts. So he's not new to fighting per se, but he is new to MMA. I think in that regard, I'm going to actually want to side with Justin Tafa here. I understand that there is a MMA experience level that Parker Porter possesses, and he is probably going to be the bigger guy, but Justin Tafa, Junior Tafa in this case, is going to be the taller guy. He's not going to be quite as long, but he's going to have a longer leg reach, and obviously I think he's going to be more of an athletic build when we see him, although Parker Porter weighed in at his lightest weight at that previous fight. So with that being said, I think I am going to err on the side of Junior Tafa, even though he's coming off a loss to Mo Usman, where he really didn't show much of a striking ability at all, although Mo Usman kind of just hung on him for most of it. So if Parker Porter has the idea to go in there and just hang on Junior Tafa, I think that would be his best chance at victory. Being 38 years old, I don't think he's going to be out dynamic, or he's going to be more dynamic or out point fight him. And I think Junior Tafa probably has the ability at 26 years old to learn from that previous fight where he was held up against the cage by Mo Usman, to potentially find at least one or two ways to get out of it against, it sounds even hard to say, but I think Parker Porter might be lesser competition even in grappling than Mo Usman. Mo Usman, considering the family he comes from and having Kamaru Usman there to train with for most of his life in the grappling sense. So I'm going to go with Junior Tafa here. I think he's going to be able to avoid any type of grappling that Parker Porter comes at him. I think he's going to be a little bit quicker. Like I said, he's got boxing experience. He's got kickboxing experience. Even though he's 4-1 in MMA, I think he's got plenty of time inside an octagon or a ring or a cage, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to go with Junior Tafa here. I think his striking is better than Parker Porter's.
Yeah, fair enough. Hopefully Parker Porter wrestles. That's what I'm looking for. Next up, we got Aaron Blanchfield versus Talia Santos. And anybody that's been watching for the past year and a half or so, since Aaron Blanchfield has really taken a rise in the UFC, should know that I am going to take Aaron Blanchfield in this fight. Can't bet against her. I think that she's absolutely destined for greatness. I think if Valentina weren't such a dominant champ for so long and Alexa Grasso had just gone in there and beat her the way that she did, that Aaron Blanchfield would potentially be the next one up. But, Valentina, just after her tenure as a champ, deserves the immediate rematch. But Aaron Blanchfield at this point does have the resume. She has the win streak to, lay claim to the next title shot after this upcoming fight between Valentina and Alexa Grasso. And I think that Talia Santos, she's legit. She's up there as well. She's a really legitimate contender. I just think Aaron Blanchfield, the wrestling is too good. The control from top, we're seeing her striking get better and better. And as soon as she takes girls down, it's basically game over for them. We've seen her do it to some of the best. Like Jessica Andrade didn't even stand a chance. Sure, she came in late notice, whatever. But at this point, honestly, in the same way, like it sounds, say what you want, but in the same way that like we've been watching Sean O'Malley for like a couple of years, following his career since really like the inception and his UFC rise. It kind of feels the same way with Aaron Blanchfield, where she's young, she's talented, she's marketable, and I think pretty soon she's maybe going to be as close to a household name as a women's MMA fighter could be. Talia Santos, just another stepping stone. So I'm going Aaron Blanchfield.
Yeah, I'm going to be going with Aaron Blanchfield as well, but for a little bit of a different reason. I think about Talia Santos and I think about her weaknesses. And in her last fight against Valentina Shevchenko, even though it looked like she was winning the majority of that fight and should have won that fight, it was the grappling and the takedown that won her that fight, or at least kept her inside that fight for a long time. And won her some solid rounds, more rounds than anyone had won against Valentina Shevchenko, and being more dominant than anyone had been against Valentina Shevchenko up until that point. She's got a submission win over Joanne Calder-Woodward, and then besides that, we're looking at all decisions. Now, obviously, Talia Santos, 30 years old, you can see that she's been improving her level of competition and also the way that she's going about those fights. Also, Aaron Blanchfield at 24 years old, has been improving, but much more rapidly. And I mean, out wrestling, out grappling to a decision Miranda Maverick, I think is big. And then JJ Aldrich, Molly McCann, which is less impressive. Jessica Andrade getting the submission victory over her. I know Jessica was stepping in on short notice, but Jessica Andrade is a muscle hamster of a woman. So for Erin Blanchfield to go in there and just kind of have her way with her in the way that she did, in a way that maybe Jessica Andrade maybe liked, I think Erin Blanchfield shows that she has some of the best grappling prowess inside of the UFC women's divisions as of now. I think Talia Santos is absolutely going to be a heavy test for her, but I don't think Talia Santos is going to throw at her any much more of a difficult wrestling challenge than Jessica Andrade did. And I don't think Talia Santos, even though she's a little younger, a little faster, probably even a little bit longer, I don't know that she's possessing that much more of a knockout KO ability than Jessica Andrade also possessed. So she is going to have a training camp to be able to improve here. But just like Erin Blanchfield, really until the wheels fall off at this point, until I start to see something that's going to give me pause as to why her grappling can't propel her to an eventual belt, I'm going to have to go with that, because I still remain that I think grappling, and maybe Sean O'Malley is showing the difference here, but it's always been either you're a dominant grappler or you're a dominant striker and have a fantastic takedown defense. It's been those two things. It's never just one thing. If you're going to be the striker, you could have just grappling and go a long way and win fights and get all the way up there. Look at Aljamain Sterling. You could have just one move that you perfect and go all the way. When it comes to striking, you can't really have that, because if Sean O'Malley didn't have as good a takedown defense, potential or distance management, it's possible that Aljo was eventually going to get him. So with all that being said, I think Erin Blanchfield is getting better quicker. She's younger. She's got a lot more to learn, and she's going to absorb it like a sponge. She already has probably some of the best grappling in the women's division, so I'm going to have to go with her. But I would say that this is definitely her hardest test, considering Talia Santos gave Valentina Shevchenko everything she could handle, and Valentina eventually going on and losing through grappling to Alexa Grasso exploited a weakness. So that shows that she has an intelligence level there fighting that not every woman possesses. So I would definitely be concerned and pause. And I think, a line at plus 125 is probably correct. I want to check out what Tapology is. No surprise, they're going to go with Erin Blanchfield, as we are too. But I would definitely say that this is not one that I would consider necessarily a lock.
Yeah, it's a little weird to me that this is like a mid-tier fight on this Singapore card. Like, you made these two ladies fly out to Singapore for this. I feel like this easily could, like, it's hard to get excited for a women's MMA fight. This is a really good number one contender fight. I feel like this could have been slotted higher on a better card, maybe like a pay-per-view. This is going to get a lot of eyes. Hopefully the people in Singapore are grateful, because that's a really important fight. The division kind of hangs in that balance a little bit, and the talent level is so high. Next up, we got Rinya Nakamura versus Fernie Garcia, and I'm going with the minus 700 favorite, Rinya Nakamura. He knocked out a guy that we spoke about earlier, Toshiomi Kazama, who's fighting Garrett Armfield. He fought him in his UFC debut as part of that road to the UFC Japan. It was the final on that Sergey Spivak, Derek Lewis card. Again, that was supposed to be that regional card. That would have been exciting for those fans, following like the Asian fighters up through that. Essentially, it's like their version of the Contender Series or the Ultimate Fighter. But anyways, Rinya Nakamura, he's got like the punching power of a Alex Poatan Pajeda type of guy. Like, he's got stupid strong hands. Toshiomi Kazama tried to close the distance with him early, and it ended so poorly for him. The athleticism of Nakamura is extremely impressive. His timing is incredible. I honestly don't know much about Fernie Garcia, but Rinya Nakamura is going to get the finish this week. He needs to become a household name as soon as possible, because he's cool and he just wants to end fights early, and he's successful at doing so a lot of the time. So I'm definitely going with Rinya Nakamura, first round TKO. What do you got?
Yeah, so I can fill everybody in a little bit on Fernie Garcia. Fernie Garcia is a striker slash grappler. He's one of those types of guys who's moderately well rounded, not great at any particular area in the UFC or in martial arts. You could see as I went through his record there, he had a couple submission rear naked choke victories at the beginning of his career, but that really started to plateau once he got into semi decent competition. Largely a decision fighter. He has decent hands, decent boxing. Throws a couple low leg kicks. Nothing too extravagant on the feet. He can grapple a little bit, but a lot of the time he just doesn't possess the speed or the precision or the power to really be an impactful force on the feet. And he also doesn't protect or possess much of the control when it comes to grappling that you would look for in somebody who's going to be a dominant grappler. So for all of those reasons, I don't think Fernie Garcia is exceptional when it comes to UFC caliber talent. And I think Rinya Nakamura, like you said, Keith, exhibits a lot of those skills and abilities that would get somebody excited for a potential, I don't want to say like a generational talent, but, get somebody excited for a fighter that could be exceptional. Having that combination of speed, power, precision, and gas tank is crucial for a rise to superstardom. And I think this is a potential setup fight here. And I don't know why I even say potential, because it looks to be just that, a setup fight for Rinya Nakamura in front of his home swath of the earth to be put on display and get a fantastic finish.
Yeah, it's fun. This is like those UK cards, and we've seen how much that's done for a lot of these, British regional fighters, like the Tom Aspinalls, the Darren Tills, Paddy Pimblets of the world. And that's exactly what this is going to be for Rinya Nakamura. Like, I truly believe that he is like the big star that's going to be coming out of this card for that area of the world. If he isn't already, it's hard to get a gauge on what the other fan bases internationally, who they're on top of and everything. But we'll find out, based on the sounds coming from the crowd, if they're really on Rinya Nakamura. He's exciting.
I'm excited for that fight.
Yeah.
Speaking of excited for fights, the return of Giga Chikadze taking on Alex Bruce Lee Caceres. What are your thoughts on this one?
I'm pumped for this one. We haven't seen Giga Chikadze since his last loss, his last fight, which was a loss against Calvin Kattar, and that was a sick fight, right? Like, Calvin Kattar is a really good test for who's really ready for this featherweight division. Who's climbing that upper echelon, and Giga Chikadze certainly has great kickboxing for conventional kickboxing, like that type of competition. He has like the greatest body kick in the world. I believe it. I can't remember what promotion that is. What is that? KS1. He had like the Giga kick when he was over there.
That Giga kick, yeah.
Yeah, he was a champ over there. Just incredible, like groundbreaking kickboxer. And then he comes to the UFC and he has a little bit of a rise and comes across Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar has also been a great learning experience for a lot of fighters. We've seen guys fight Calvin Kattar. And, while he probably will never be a champion, he's definitely a great guy to like, he's a little unorthodox, throws a lot of elbows, and a lot of that stuff was surprising for Giga Chikadze. I think that was a learning experience. Alex Caceres is creative in like that MMA fighting type of way, same way that Calvin Kattar is, but I think that Calvin Kattar was probably a great learning experience for Giga Chikadze. And then this is probably going to be a good chunk of this fight is going to be spent at distance, straight orthodox kickboxing as well. And I think that Giga Chikadze wins those exchanges. I don't think that there's going to be a finish in this fight, but I think it's going to be a fun 15-minute stand-up bout. Alex Caceres being a little bit more creative and Giga Chikadze being a lot more technical and sort of picking them apart over those 15 minutes. So I'm going with Giga Chikadze here. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, the one thing I picked up on that you were saying, there's a gaggle of geese outside my house for the second time today. The one thing that I picked up on that you were saying that really resonated with me is the fact that Alex Caceres likes to do a lot more creative, extravagant, as I would call it, kind of spinning leg kicks. And I mean, shit, he named himself Bruce Leroy. So I think that really exemplifies what kind of style he's going to bring, a creative kind of like kickboxing, karate, exciting style that looks pretty. But I think when you have a very technical kickboxer with extremely fast and powerful and hard leg kicks like Giga Chikadze, I think Alex Caceres doing some of that wild stuff is going to open himself up for bigger kicks. And if he decides he's not going to do the wild stuff in sense of being a little bit more conservative and protect against the kicks, I don't think he's going to be fighting his fight. And typically the best Alex Caceres we see is when he is in that like flow state, just fighting his fight. So I think Giga Chikadze being technical and fast and just as long as him is definitely going to throw him off. And Giga Chikadze obviously going to be hungry to get back in there. And I think the Calvin Kattar fight is definitely, he took a long time off as he needed. I don't know if there was additional injuries or what caused this to be a year and a half layoff for him, but I like Giga Chikadze to get it done, and he's got a big hill to climb, especially now at 35 years old. Losing at 33 and a half ain't great, but having to come back at 35 is not better at all. So I think he's got a big hill to climb. He's still number 10. The division is in a much different place than when he left it. So I think he's got a lot to do, and he's going to go out there and try to make a statement. If he gets over anxious, I think, especially not being in the cage, I think Caceres does have an ability to potentially take him down in an odd way. And then we'll see Giga Chikadze on the ground. We haven't really seen him tested too much on the ground. I believe he has good takedown defense, but I don't think he's really been in a situation where he's had to really test that. Calvin Kattar was a stand-up fight, and Barboza was a stand-up fight, Cub Swanson was a stand-up fight, and he's knocking everybody out before that. So I think that may be something we would see out of Bruce Leroy, an attempt to take him down. I still think Giga Chikadze can ward it all off, but it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening. But I'm predicting Giga, if he's the same guy that he was when he left, we should see some fireworks.
Yeah, and this is a well-made matchup size-wise too, right? Alex Caceres coming in at 5'10", because Giga Chikadze is at 6 foot. He's a massive 145er. Like, he looks so big against some of these other guys. So that's something else to keep in mind. Like, Giga Chikadze, the sizes are
Calvin
really.
Kattar is also 6 foot too, and that's who gave him trouble. So if he's going to be beating up on guys at 145 who are 5'6", maybe like Volk, I mean, imagine a 5'6" taking on a 6 footer. I mean, that would be an interesting fight there. But
yeah, definitely. Next up, we got Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann, and I think Anthony Smith is in the twilight of his career right now. I don't think we're going to be seeing him win against high-level competition. Ryan Spann is like sort of middling in the light heavyweight division right now. He like makes a push for a little bit and then loses, and makes a push and then loses. But Anthony Smith right now, like at one point he was incredible. And, a lot of people viewed him as the man to potentially beat John Jones, but he's definitely fallen off quite a bit since then. And I think Ryan Spann is probably going to catch him, because Anthony Smith, as he's gotten older, you could see that, like, he still has the fight IQ, but his body doesn't really react in the way that he wants it to. And he doesn't really get out of the way of things like he used to. And I think you can't really afford to be old and slow against a guy like Ryan Spann, who just has power in his hands, and again, not the most technical guy, but has caught a lot of people. And Anthony Smith right now has a strong likelihood of getting caught just at his age and ability. So I'm going with Ryan Spann. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think Anthony Smith over, something about fighting John Jones definitely seems to take a degree away from people. And I think it might have taken 2 from Anthony Smith, because ever since then, when you go back and look at his 5 on in, he beat Devin Clark, I think, following that. Jimmy Crute was a doctor stoppage to a leg injury and still managed to get taken down by a one-footed Jimmy Crute. Then he beat Ryan Spann via submission, a rear naked choke. That was, a year and 10 months ago. So this is a rematch. In the last 2 years since that fight, Ryan Spann has went on to beat Yanku Dalaba via submission. He's went on to beat Dominic Reyes for a knockout with a power jab, which, I mean, after the knockout that Dominic Reyes took from Yuri Prohashka, that's not surprising at all, but it was a decently long layup for him. And he got submitted by Nikita Krylov. So his submission defense woes have not, fallen by the wayside, but I do think Ryan Spann is a much better fighter than the guy who stepped into the octagon a year and 10 months ago against Anthony Smith. And I think Anthony Smith hasn't improved. I think Ryan Spann has improved and Anthony Smith has probably regressed. Like you were saying, Keith, I think he's a little bit slower than his IQ has calibrated him for the majority of his career. So getting out of the way of things is just a tick off. I also think his counters just a tick off. And I also think that, we haven't seen a great gas tank from Anthony Smith either in the second and the third rounds. It starts to look like he gasses out. He gets tired, especially when he starts getting hit. It seems like, I don't want to say that he gives up because his name is Lionheart, but it seems like that is a little bit of a mismatch of a nickname and the fighting style we see from him, because you expect with a name like Lionheart that he's ferocious all the time. And it's just not what we've seen as of late. And, maybe he can get that back, but on a 2-fight skid at 35 years old at 205, and he's a solid 205. He's not like a big 205er, so it's not like he could be looking to go to 265. And I think he's already big at 205. That 85 ain't an option, not at 35 years old. So I think for Anthony Smith, I think he's just trying to survive, and that's not a great place to be from. You could say, back an animal up against a corner, but I think that primal instinct is not what you want against a guy like Ryan Spann, especially when your equilibrium doesn't match up to how fast you actually are. Thinking that you're faster than you are, thinking that you have an ability to get out of the way, thinking that your reaction time is X when it's really Y, I think is a recipe that spells for you getting hit, which we've seen a lot from Anthony Smith, and a guy with power like Ryan Spann. I think if Anthony Smith tries to shoot on him, Ryan Spann already knows what that grappling is like. And even though he's, maybe improved at it, even though he has that last loss via submission, I still think that Ryan Spann is going to be able to, land on Anthony Smith. And we're talking about him fighting Nikita Krylov. Nikita Krylov to Anthony Smith is definitely a step down in competition, in speed, in precision, in ability, in diversity of strikes and diversity of movement and diversity of attack. So I think in every way, I would go with Ryan Spann here. And the people on Tapology are looking to agree with that assessment.
Yeah, 100% on board with that. Anthony Smith is, we're starting to see it from these guys that commentate, right? Like, they do that media stuff. Chris Weidman does a lot of media. Dominic Cruz does.
Cruz.
Yeah, we're starting
Felder.
Felder fell off.
I mean, he's retired now, but, it wasn't like he was having a fantastic career when he was commentating.
Yeah, he wasn't the Irish Dragon really anymore. So, yeah.
Is commentating the worst space for MMA?
Yeah, 100%. All right, so main event time, and this isn't really a fight that I feel like is necessary. Like, this has no reason to happen other than Max Holloway asked for it, and the UFC, for numerous reasons, probably wanted to do this for Korean Zombie, and Max Holloway asked for the fight. Korean Zombie's been a company man for a long time. And he's, in Hall of Fame fights, multiple Hall of Fame fights, I believe, up to this point. And, he's a recognizable name, right? The Korean Zombie is, again, he's like one of those names in this division up there with the Ortegas and everything. Anyways, Max Holloway's going to kick the shit out of him. It's gonna look a lot like the Alexander Volkanovski fight, where Korean Zombie just can't really get knocked out, but he'll be asleep on his feet walking forward. Max Holloway is gonna outbox him. I think it'll go a little bit longer than that Volkanovski fight did, because Max Holloway, I don't believe, hits as hard as Volkanovski. But it's gonna be the Korean Zombie staggering forward for 3 rounds basically after he gets pieced up for the first 2. I think they'll let this fight go on a little bit longer than that Volk fight because it is home turf, and I think they're probably going to give Chang Sung Jung any opportunity to possibly pull out a W here, especially depending on like who the judges are and who the refs are and everything like that. But Max Holloway is a -800 favorite for a reason. He asked for the fight. And Chang Sung Jung is not the same guy anymore. So, that's pretty much all you could say about that, right? Max Holloway's going to come up. That's it. What do you got?
Yeah, the thing that always blows my mind, every Max Holloway fight, I feel the need to always point it out. 31 years of age for this guy, turning 32, still in his prime. Doesn't even really spar anymore because he just has spent all of his time sparring, actually in the cage, actually fighting and accumulating a career 24-7, which I think undersells who Max Holloway is, considering 3 of those losses are to probably the best featherweight to ever do it. So really 24-4. Max Holloway has some of the most crisp, clean boxing. And beyond that, his reaction time and his flow state is just next level. So I think Max Holloway has every opportunity to get this done. And then you're also going to be fighting a motivated Max Holloway, considering the devastation that's happened to Hawaii in the last couple of weeks. So you're fighting a motivated Max Holloway who's going to be impassioned and emboldened by everything that's gone on through the natural disaster, or maybe not so natural. No. But that being said, I think you also have Chan Sung Jung, who's got 1 foot out the door. This is a thing that was put on for him. I think he's going out there and trying to give a great performance, but he's knowing he's taking the gloves off at the end of this. I don't think, and Max obviously could potentially still have a career at 55 as well as 46, 45, depending on what happens with Volk and all of that stuff. I don't think that Volk fight happens again, but Max still has plenty of candle left to burn. And I don't think Chan Sung Jung is going to be fighting in the UFC after this. So it's a nice send off. And hopefully they maybe, if they see the fight getting as a, one-sided as it was against Volk, maybe they stop it a little bit early, save Chan Sung Jung some damage, and send him out on a high horse. But yeah, I don't, this is not who I would hope to fight on my so long fight. I know he hasn't even said that he's gone, but he mentioned after Volk, he's like, hey, listen, I want to fight Volk. And if I lose like that to the guy who's the best, like, what am I fighting for? And I think because he is so famous in South Korea, I think he's got all different lines. He's got a TV show. He's got so much going on for him. I think he's such a draw. I think they didn't want him to go out like that. They wanted him to go out. The UFC probably selfishly wanted to go out and squeeze just a little bit more milk out of that cow. But that notwithstanding, this looks like it's going to be Max Holloway all the way. And just for shits and giggles, what do you think the Tapology number is at? Over or under 89% Max Holloway?
It's going to be 99%.
97.
Wow, 3%. Listen, yeah, you're right though. It is. I mean, sure, it's the ultimate send off though, because while he is
going out to buy a legend taking out a legend. I mean, fair play, right? You're not getting taken out by sacrificing to some new kid.
Do you think Max Holloway takes it easy on him for the first couple of rounds? Do you think he brings him
books in the UFC?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Do you think he brings him along a little bit in the first couple of rounds and takes it a little easy?
No, I don't think he knows how to. He's going to be popping that jab out there, hit him with a 2, duck under, get him with a nice uppercut, hit him to the body. I don't think he's going to take it easy at all. I think he's going to go out and style.
I think that this could end up going 5 rounds though for some reason. But yeah, Chan Sung Jung is definitely gone after this one.
Yeah, I don't know. Max hasn't been the biggest finisher ever.
No,
so, I can't say that that's going to happen. And yeah, maybe once he's got it handily in the bag, maybe he cruise controls, or maybe he doesn't have as much tenacity as maybe he would if he was down or if he was fighting for a belt. I mean, Max is kind of in a holding pattern with his career. So who knows what's going to happen. He just kind of goes out there and fights as a fan favorite. So he needs to do something. I mean, it's just, but he moves up and then Volk's there too. I mean, it's just, I feel bad for him because it's there's this one guy that he just can't seem to get by. And we love that guy too, but
he needs to go to welterweight.
No, he welterweight. Welterweight.
Walter White. Yeah.
Walter White.
Yeah, dude, I think about that anytime I say Walter White. Also,
he Walter White.
I was listening to this is just so funny. I was listening to Part of My Take this morning, and they touch on all sports, and they do a good job. Big Cat and PFT watch all the big UFC cards, which is cool. It gets a little bit more shine on there. They had John Anik. They have a couple of the big names on. Anyways, Hank, one of their producers, very funny guy, but he was like, what does the bantam man mean? He was so confused by what bantamweight meant. And he thought that O'Malley was the Bantam Man Championship. That was I don't know, it was just silly.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, just silly. But yeah, anyways, I'm pumped for this card. I think it's overall, start to finish, it's going to be a good one. And it is an epic send-off for Chan Sung Jung. And how epic would it be if he somehow pulled out a victory there? That would be insane.
I don't know how I would recover. I don't know how I would handle that, honestly.
He lasts 5 rounds.
I don't know. Did we lose you or did you lose me? I think I'm still live. Well, I think I'm still live. Regardless, this is going to happen at I think the main card starts at 8:30 Eastern time. So this is going to happen at 11. It's going to happen before lunch. So having to deal with an entire day if Max Holloway had lost, I don't know what I'm going to do. But with that being said, until we hear from Keith, I'm going to run with the pick rundown. All right, so pick rundown time. Maybe Keith will join us. Unsure if he even knows what's up, but I am going with Yasaku Kinoshita to get the win over Billy Golf. I'm going with Rolando Bedoya getting the win over Keenan Song. Chini Nojikani over Michael Olin Jachuk. Gonna tail Keith and go with Garrett Armfield over Tashomi Kazama. And moving up to the main card, I'm going to be going with Junior Tafa over Parker Porter, Aaron Blanchfield over Talia Santos. I'm going to be going with Rinya Nakamura over Fernie Garcia, Giga Chikadze over Alex Caceres, Ryan Spann over Anthony Smith, and finally I'm going with Max Holloway, getting it done over Chan Sung Jung, either by KO or decision. I can't imagine that that's going to net you anything less than minus 350, but maybe probably more, honestly. But regardless, those are the picks. We thank you so much for tuning in. I know we didn't say it at the beginning, but please go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. We really do appreciate everybody who subscribes to our channel and likes the videos. If you drop a comment, let us know what your thoughts are on our picks. And if you don't already do this, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pickin Winners. There's Keith.
I don't know what the fuck just happened. I'm just gonna do my pick rundown real quick.
Pick rundown.
Yeah, sorry. I gotta pull Tapology up again. I think we were pretty similar on most of our picks.
I got it for you right here on the screen.
Yeah, I got it. I just want to say I got Yusaku Kinoshita over Billy Goff. That fight definitely gonna end in a finish. I think under rounds, even if it's under 1.5, it's gonna be an early finish in that one. And then I'm going with Garrett Armfield over Toshiomi Kazama. Main card, going with Parker Porter over Junior Tafa. Aaron Blanchfield over Talia Santos. Love the line there. I think it's going to be a long time. You know, like we'll see Aaron Blanchfield in the championship fight. Hopefully she wins this week. We'll see her in a championship fight. And then I think after that championship fight, it'll be the last time that we get this good of a line on Aaron Blanchfield. Excuse me. Rinya Nakamura, minus 700 favorite. Definitely a good parlay leg. I think if you're in one of those states where you can bet him to win by KO in like the first 5 minutes or the first 3 minutes or something like that, do it. I think he's going to put Fernie Garcia to sleep early in front of a very friendly crowd. Giga Chikadze over Alex Caceres, like him to win by decision. Ryan Spann over Anthony Smith. I think he gets done by knockout. Max Holloway over Chang Sung Jung. I think he gets done by decision. All right, there we go. Sorry for interrupting all the other promos and everything else. Sorry that my Wi-Fi randomly took a shit. Actually, it wasn't even my Wi-Fi. My computer is like 15 years old at this point and just decides it doesn't want to be connected to my Wi-Fi for a minute anymore. But
what can you do? What can you do?
Other
than listen to us on Spotify for the full episode, video and audio on Spotify. If you don't like it on YouTube, if you don't watch us live, you don't get to see all of this impromptu waffling I have to do whenever there's difficulties. But with that being said, is there anything that you want to say to the fine people before we get out of here today, Keith?
No, just thank you for being here, and thank you, Tom, for another episode of Picking Fights.
Everybody have a good rest of the week and enjoy the fights.